I thought I was listening to history, but instead, I discovered terrifying secrets buried in time. I never should have opened that door. It felt wrong the moment my hand brushed the cold metal knob. A heavy dread weighed on my chest. My everyday life had been so predictable, so safe. Getting lost in the archives at the old library was my escape. Dusty books, quiet whispers, the scent of old paper calmed me. But that day, everything shifted. The library was dim, shadows crept around every corner. The flickering lights overhead added an eerie glow. I could hear my own breath, sharp and shallow as I roamed the aisles. It felt colder, almost unnatural. Each footstep echoed. Then, I heard something, a whisper. A soft, haunting sound that made my skin crawl. Curiosity spiked through me. The feeling of something lurking grew stronger with every step. I turned a corner and found the door. It was old, with a lock that looked like it hadn't been touched in years. My heart raced. I couldn't help it. I felt drawn to it, like a moth to a flame. The stories I had heard about this place whispered through my mind tales of secrets unearthed, of vanished patrons who wandered too far into the depths of the archives. As I fumbled with the lock, I heard a loud creak. The sound sent chills down my spine. I paused, listening. Silence fell heavy around me. Then came a clatter, a book tumbling from a nearby shelf. I jumped, my heartbeat quickening. The air felt thick, almost charged, as if electricity buzzed in the shadows. Just my imagination, I muttered to myself. I turned the knob and thrust the door open. The air that burst forth was cold and musty, as though it had been trapped there for decades. My eyes widened with fascination and terror. Inside, the room was dark, lined with shelves that seemed to reach toward the ceiling, filled with dusty tomes I had never seen. What had been hidden in here? I took a step inside. The door slammed shut behind me with a deafening bang. My heart stopped. Suddenly, I was not alone. A silhouette shifted in the corner, something or someone watching me. I froze, my breath in my throat. The figure moved, shadows dancing around it. I couldn't see clearly, only the outline of something dark and ominous. Just then, the room erupted with sound. Books flew from the shelves, thudding to the ground like warning shots. I screamed. It echoed. What had I awakened? Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. The room fell eerily silent after my scream. My pulse thundered in my ears as I stared into the darkness. The silhouette remained, unmoving, but it felt as though it was studying me, penetrating my soul with unseen eyes. The chill in the air tightened around me like a vice, suffocating the oxygen from the small, confined space that I steeled myself, fighting the urge to bolt for the door that had slammed shut. Hello? I croaked, my voice trembling, pathetic. The figure shifted slightly, its shape becoming less a shadow and more a distinct presence, receding into the constricting darkness. For a moment, a pale light flickered, illuminating the wall in front of me. I squinted, and in that frantic moment of focus, I caught a glimpse of old photographs, faded images of the library's founders, their solemn faces staring back at me, but their eyes were not right, their gazes were hollow, empty. As I stepped closer, trying to make sense of the disarray surrounding me, a low growl rolled through the room, reverberating against the walls and vibrating in my bones. I whirled around, half expecting to see a creature lurking, but nothing stirred except the scattered books lying around me, their pages fluttering as if caught in a gust of wind. Please just show yourself. I shouted, desperation clawing at my throat. God, I was scared. To my left, a heavy tome had fallen open. An inscription swam into view, words that seemed to pulse as they bled into existence on the yellowed pages: "Those who seek shall find, and those who awaken shall know." A sudden blast of icy wind swept through the room, swirling around me like a tempest, then blew out the flickering overhead lights, plunging me into total darkness. My breath came hard as I fought against panic. I strained my ears to listen, but all I could hear was the sound of my own heart racing and the distant echoes of creaking wood. The presence that had seemed so solidly defined moments ago slipped away, leaving behind an overwhelming sense of foreboding. Suddenly, a sharp laugh sliced through the darkness. The sound was jagged and cruel, sending shivers coursing down my spine. "You've come to uncover the secrets, have you?" A voice, like coal scraping against metal, reverberated from all around me. I scanned the room again, terrified, but all I could see were shadows, thickening and writhed as if they had lives of their own. I was no longer a curious librarian, I was a trespasser in a sacred domain, and I could feel it resenting my presence. "Leave now, while you can," it hissed, but the warning barely registered before a heavy book shot from a nearby shelf and slammed into the wall beside me with a deafening thud. The sudden noise jolted me back into action. I turned to the door, adrenaline igniting my limbs, but my hand froze just inches from the knob. I heard whispers swelling from all corners, growing louder, a cacophony of voices trapped in the very fabric of the room. Each proclamation flew by like a chilling breeze, sending goose flesh prickling across my skin. "We are the forgotten, the buried," the screams echoing behind lost days. In that moment of paralyzing fear, I felt a hand cold and clammy grip my shoulder. I gasped, spinning around, but there was nothing there. My heart pounded against my ribs as the darkness pressed in closer, swirling with an unseen energy that suffocated me. I closed my eyes, desperate to block it out, but the vibrating whispers slithered inside, darting through my mind, filling my thoughts with dread. "Find the past," they urged. "Embrace the shadows, or darkness will claim you." My eyes shot open. There, illuminated by an unnatural glow emanating from the very floor, lay something small, something gleaming like a polished gem. I took a hesitant step forward, the whispers growing frantic, urging me to reach for it. Something inside told me that it was a key to the very secrets I had been drawn to uncover. With shaking hands, I knelt down. As soon as my fingers brushed the object, the ground trembled, and a deep, resonating sound roared beneath me. Blinding light enveloped the room, licking at my skin like flames, consuming the darkness, the whispers turning into an eerie chorus that screamed my name. Panic rose as I felt the world shift. In a split second, I was yanked forward, as if the library itself had come alive. The light expanded, swallowing me whole, and just before everything went completely white, before I could catch my breath, I glimpsed the silhouettes of countless figures surrounding me, their hollow eyes filled with despair. And then nothing. I woke with a start, gasping in a cold sweat. I was back in the library, but the entire space felt wrong, as if I had returned to a place that had somehow changed. The heavy silence pressed against my ears with a weight that felt like dread itself. My heart raced in terror as I dashed toward the exit, but when I reached for the door, I found it locked tight. An echoing laugh erupted behind me, shattering the silence. "You didn't think it would be so easy, did you?" I spun around, my blood turning to ice as the darkness surged forward, and I realized whatever had been awakened was far from done with me. The shadows tightened around me, pulsating with an almost sentient malice as I struggled to take a breath. The laugh, cruel and taunting, mingled with the whispers, now infused with a sinister urgency. "You've stirred what was meant to slumber," a voice rasped, the tone slithering under my skin like the slow crawl of a spider. "And for that, there will be a price." Desperation clawed at my throat. I yanked at the door, but it held firm, mocking my escape. I turned to face the room, now a twisted labyrinth of fear and uncertainty. It no longer resembled a library, shelves lined with books transformed into towering monoliths of terror, their spines warped and faces contorted as if they were silently screaming. "Look closer," the voice urged, filled with an ecstatic kind of malice. The whispers swelled, drowning my thoughts. They begged me to see, to confront what I had unwittingly awakened. With trembling hands, I reached for the nearest book, its cover cloaked in a thick layer of dust that swirled into the air as I pulled it from the shelf. The title read, Chronicles of the Damned. Instinctively, I recoiled. The pages fluttered open on their own, revealing sketches of grotesque figures, pale hands reaching from the darkness begging for release. I swallowed hard, my stomach churning as an overwhelming sadness gripped me. Understanding is the first step, the voice hissed lovingly, and I hated that I could almost hear a sinister smile hidden within its cadence. Shut up. I howled, slamming the book closed. The room shuddered as if my defiance had struck a nerve. A window shattered somewhere in the distance, mirrors reflecting countless eyes that peered at me, filled with despair and longing. I could feel the man-ocean of souls trapped beneath the library's crumbling veneer, the weight of their stories pressing down on me like a shroud that I stumbled backwards and collided with something solid. Turning slowly, I found myself face to face with the figure I had seen earlier, its silhouette darker than the encroaching void around us, somehow growing sharper and more defined. It stepped closer, and I could feel the chill radiating from it like an icy wind across a winter's night. Why did you wake us? It breathed, its voice piercing and lingering, as though each word had crawled from a grave long forgotten. 1,000 breaths whispered in unison just behind it, forming a dark chorus that wove together tales of sorrow and anguish, a backdrop of shattered dreams that I didn't mean to. I stammered, stepping away, the weight of my words falling flat against the expansive dread encompassing the room. I just wanted to know. The figure tilted its head, and the air shimmered as if the darkness were alive. Knowledge comes with a price, little trespasser. Are you prepared to pay? Before I could respond, the floor beneath me groaned and cracked, fissures spiderwebbing across the surface. Terror surged as the ground broke apart, and from the depths, more shadows coalesced, the remnants of the forgotten, distorted visages emerging from the abyss, drawn closer by my fear like moths to a flame. Help us, their voices echoed harmoniously, a symphony of suffering that clawed at the deepest corners of my heart. Free us from this place before it consumes you too. Instinct screamed at me to run, but the figure blocked my path, its presence an insurmountable barrier. Panic surged through my veins. I turned, searching for another escape, but every direction was overtaken by writhing shadows eager to drag me into their depths. Surrender to what you fear, the darkness beckoned. Discover the truth in your blood. A realization struck me, an unsettling warmth seeped through my skin, pooling in my veins like a forgotten memory. I could feel the pulse of the library beneath me, a dark heart beating syncopated with my own. Please, leave me. I screamed, gripping my head as I stumbled toward the scattered books, their pages fluttering like lost spirits. Desperate, I kicked one away, and suddenly, the room fell still. The whispers stilled, as if the world was holding its breath. Just as I thought, for a fleeting moment I could gather my courage and fight. Beams of searing light burst from the fissures in the floor, illuminating a scattering of glistening objects, long buried relics, glimmering in a spectral glow. And there, among them, was what appeared to be a journal, its cover embossed with a symbol I recognized from my nightmares, twisting tendrils entwined in an eternal loop, a sign of a bond formed through blood and suffering. As I reached toward it, the figure lunged, a scream that twisted my insides echoed from its throat. No! You mustn't, but it was too late. As my fingers brushed the leather cover, I felt everything around me crack and shatter. The world spiraled out of control, the shadows converging, drowning me in their darkness. Then, a silence that felt like the calm before a storm descended. My heart thundered in my chest, and in that oppressive quiet, I sensed a shift, a realization dawning that my choices had unleashed something unspeakable, and just then, the door behind me creaked open with a slow deliberation that drowned my heart in dread. Beyond the threshold, a vacant hallway stretched into infinity, split by a flickering bulb that flickered, warning me of the profound horror that awaited. Leaning too close, temptation clawing at my insides, I knew the unimaginable truths were just a step away. But something was waiting, an insidious presence lurking in the shadows of time itself, ready to spill forth whatever evil had lain dormant for too long. And before I could scream, before I could turn to flee, a voice whispered in my ear, come to know the darkness, or become one with it. The figure behind me raised an arm, its hand stretching toward the door as it beckoned me forward. I couldn't tell if I was meant to run or obey. All I knew was that I was about to take a step into a nightmarish truth from which there was no return. A chill coursed through my body as I stood on the precipice of that doorway. The faint light struggling to penetrate the shadows felt like a taunt, a reminder of the world beyond, a world that no longer felt safe, a world I might never see again. Yet, the darkness behind me thrummed with anticipation, pulsating like a heartbeat, urging me to choose, step into the unknown. The figure whispered, its voice almost a caress, as if luring me into an embrace of insanity rather than fear. What lies beyond holds answers, truths that can liberate or enslave. Will you let curiosity drive your every breath, or will you be shackled by ignorance? The broken floorboards creaked beneath my weight as I swallowed hard, torn between the suffocating dread inside the library and the tantalizing promises of what lay beyond. The journal's cover burned against my fingertips, urging me to open it, to read the secrets it held. But the air thickened with impending disaster, the smell of decay lifting from the cracks in the earth beneath me. I took a step, one small act of defiance, crossing the threshold. The instant I did, whispers erupted around me, a chorus of voices fighting against the encroaching darkness within the library, a cacophony of what felt like torment wrapped in desperation. I wasn't stepping into the unknown, I was plunging into a hidden world woven into the fabric of my reality. Behind me, the figure shifted, darkness rolling off it like mist, melding into the shadows creeping through the library. It held itself as if it were a guardian of the past and the future, tethered to a power so ancient that the air crackled with its implications. Do you hear them? It rasped, a twisted smile stretching across its featureless face. They know what you are beginning to uncover. They have craved this moment for centuries. Each heartbeat echoed louder than the last, the sound of blood rushing in my ears pushing me forward, further into the flickering hall that seemed to stretch for eternity. The shadows that curled along the walls began to take form, faces emerging from the darkness, eyes rimmed in anguish, mouths moving soundlessly in a desperate plea for release. I don't want this. I shouted, my voice nearly drowned by the wails surrounding me. I pressed on, heart racing, shoes slapping against the cool, cracked tile. The hallway began to shift, the walls bending like a never-ending nightmare, stretching and clawing at my sanity. Darkness entwined around me, cloaking my trembling figure as I felt the gaze of those ghostly remnants bearing down upon me. Help us please, they echoed together, their voices entwined with my own words, a sinister mockery of my denial. I stumbled backward, back into a memory that broke through the haze of dread, a performance I had once attended in school, where an actress had spoken of curses that twisted souls in dark places. Shards of those spoken words floated to the surface of my mind. Some doors should never be opened, for what you disturb can alter the very essence of who you are. Embracing the notion that ignorance would save me proved useless as more whispers flared up, swirling around me. You have torn down the veil, they sighed, echoing with an impossible sorrow. Now, the true horror begins. I clutched the journal tightly, feeling its power thrumming against my palm as I raced deeper into the abyss. Flickering lights cast elongated shadows that danced and intertwined, the walls rippling like the surface of a disturbed pond. With each step, history collided with the present, the air thick with despair inherent to the stories that had absorbed this space. Suddenly, a figure darted across my path, a shimmering apparition cloaked in frayed garments, its eyes wide with terror. Don't go back! It shrieked, glancing over its shoulder, panic igniting its urgency. They're coming for you. Something unseen surged in the corridor's depths, a terrifying force that echoed like thunder. From the shadows, tendrils shot forth, wrapping mercilessly around the spectral figure, dragging it back into the inky blackness. I gasped, frozen in horror as the cries of the soul flared and then silenced abruptly, swallowed whole by the darkness. Join them, the voice of the dark figure cooed from behind me, smooth yet filled with cruel mirth. They know you're here, little one. They know of your choices. They will embrace you as one of their own. Light blared through the dim hall as I stumbled back towards the flickering bulb, a desperate grasp at clarity amid the chaos. But the threshold I crossed seemed to be collapsing around me, very fabric of my reality splintering. Trapped between the worlds of light and shadow, I had unwittingly summoned something ancient and powerful, something that sought a release through me. In that moment, as I felt tendrils of darkness wrap around my ankles, I caught a glimpse of a door at the far end of the hall, blindingly bright, a sliver of hope amid the encroaching terror. Heart pounding, I made a break for it, only to hear a thunderous roar breaking from within the library, a cacophony of rage that promised retribution. With every ounce of will, I sprinted. The shadows clawed at my back, pulling at my very essence, but I couldn't look back. I lunged toward that glimmering pathway, a breath of hope, but just as my fingers grazed the doorknob, the finality of darkness enveloped me, pulling me into a void that whispered secrets I could never comprehend, and with a final, reverberating shriek, I felt everything fade to me, being extinguished within the suffocating embrace of the horror I had chosen to face. Yet, as the sensation of oblivion threatened to consume me, a chilling voice whispered through the haze, "This is only the beginning." A malevolent laugh echoed behind me, and I screamed, but no sound escaped my lips as I plummeted into a darkness deeper than I had ever known. The darkness engulfed me, swirling like thick smoke, and in its depths, I felt the icy fingers of despair gripping my soul. Time became a construct of nightmares, endless and unyielding. The sensation of weightlessness faded, replaced by a crushing force pressing me from all sides, as if I had been swallowed by the very shadows I feared. My lungs screamed, yet no air filled them, only the echoes of tormented whispers reverberated in my mind, each syllable a dagger of dread. Suddenly, I landed not on the cold tile or splintered wood of the corridor, but on a surface that breathed beneath me, pulsing with a sickening rhythm. I opened my eyes, the darkness tugging at the edges of my vision, trying to reclaim me. I blinked, forcing focus as my surroundings began to clarify. I lay on soft earth, the ground alive with the presence of something sinister, emerging from the soil like twisted roots. Thin tendrils writhed, intertwining around my limbs and dragging me slowly into an unspeakable embrace. I clawed at the ground, desperately trying to pull myself free, but the more I struggled, the tighter their grip became. Reality warped. I could see shades of faces carved in agony within the soil. They twisted and writhed, calling out silently as if sharing their torment, their fates intertwined with the very fabric of this place. Just beyond them, flickering lights ignited my senses, superficial glimmers spinning through the air. They formed images, memories of the library before the encroaching darkness had consumed it. Each flicker revealed lives frozen in time, students reading, laughter drifting through the hall, teachers passionately discussing forgotten lore. The warmth vibrated like distant music, a feeling I thought I had lost forever. "Help us," a voice lulled gently from the shadows, familiar yet wrong. It was the spectral figure from before, its form now clinging to the perimeter of my vision, flickering in and out like a poorly tuned radio signal. "You must set us free. You are the key." With sudden clarity, I realized the truth. The library was a prison for countless souls, and I, who had crossed the threshold, now held their collective fate in my trembling hands. I felt a surge of empathy for those who had become one with the maleficent ground, desperation mingling with fear and regret. The aroma of rot and decay hung heavily in the air like the weight of 1,000 unsung stories. "Join us," they begged, voices merging, yet each pleading for release as they unwittingly pulled me closer to their fate. My pulse quickened as I locked eyes with their expressions of despair, their mirrored reflections haunting my very existence. "Set us free. It's your only chance." The figure pressed, its haunting features flickering with uncertainty. "Fight. Fight it." I fought against the tendrils, each jerk of my body accentuated by waves of dread that threatened to collapse my will. Chaos erupted within me, the weight of guilt for my own curiosity entwined with their cries, pushing me both forward and back. How could I abandon them? Yet how could I abandon myself? As tendrils inched closer to my neck, I felt a flash of Claricia's sudden understanding that the journal was not merely an artifact of knowledge. It held the collective pain of those imprisoned. In my mind, I heard the ancient words evoked earlier: some doors should never be opened. Had I unwittingly unlocked not just the mysteries of the library, but the very horrors tethered within it? Fueled by desperation, I closed my eyes, reaching for the journal pressed against my chest. I could feel its vibrations aligning with the pulsing earth. If I could connect with its secrets, perhaps I could alter this connection to become the link between the realms. The tome promised fearsome power. I had to rely on it to solve this unearthly riddle. With trembling fingers, I began to open the journal, its pages responding to my touch, glowing with an ethereal light. A symphony of voices rose to a crescendo, flooding my senses, each whisper clashing against the darkness like desperate screams for salvation. Thena. Handesgold and claw-like shot from the soil. It gripped my wrist, pulling me deeper into the abyss. No. None. I shrieked, fighting against its pull with raw abandon, but I had already crossed a threshold. The secrets began to spill forth, and dark visions filled the air, echoes of dread unfolding in endless galaxy of torment and despair. Each vision was a broken story, a fragment of a life lost in time, tearing at the seams of reality itself. I felt them crashing against me like dark waves against a frail shore. In that moment of agony, something stirred inside the earth. An ancient evil awakened, more powerful than I could have imagined, rising from the layers of history embedded in the ground beneath my body. It was unshackled, relentless, and infinitely hungry. Your choice has consequences, it roared, reverberating through the ground, sending tremors up my spine. We shall feast upon your fear, become part of this eternal cycle. As the cruel grip tightened around my throat, I lunged one last time for the journal, the only weapon I had against this ancient horror. The light it emitted grew blinding, filling the darkness, casting shadows that danced with apprehension, consuming the tendrils as they sprang away, and just as the ground threatened to consume me whole, the spectral figure stepped boldly into view. You must let go. Embrace the truth. It shouted, body glowing with an ethereal light, illuminating the shadows with hope. Before I could respond, the ground beneath me ruptured violently. The chaotic roar enveloped everything, and amidst the carnage, a bright flash of light erupted, blinding me completely. Then, silence, the shadows receded, a breath of air filled my lungs again. But as I opened my eyes, I realized I was no longer in the library. Around me, the familiar faces watched, some benevolent, some grotesquely twisted, all writhing with unresolved agony. Their eyes bored deep into my soul, filled with an urgency unfathomable. I stood on the precipice of despair, knowing I was not alone. I had opened a door, but it wasn't the one I had crossed before. Something far more terrifying was lurking just beyond the veil, waiting for me. And then, with a chilling clarity, I heard whispers emerging from the shadows, slithering into my ears. You cannot escape what you have summoned. Before I could process their meaning, the ground quaked again, an ominous promise of something approaching, danger rooted deep in the earth, clawing its way back to the surface, fueled by the very secrets that had once lulled me into complacency. And with a final, deafening crack, the earth split wide open beneath my feet. I fell, plunging into a dark chasm that seemed endless, engulfed in the cold embrace of twilight. The air around me shifted unnaturally, as if the very fabric of reality was tearing apart with every breath I took. My heart raced, echoing like a war drum in the silence that enveloped me. The cries of the souls I had seen twisted like a haunting melody through the void, a cacophony of despair pulling me further down into the abyss. Suddenly, I landed unceremoniously on a cold, obsidian surface. The ground vibrated beneath me, sending ripples of energy through my body. Desperately, I scrambled to my feet, glancing around at my surroundings. I was in a cavernous expanse, deep within a cavern formed by ancient stone that pulsated with an inner light, a ghostly luminescence that illuminated the etched faces of those lost in eternal agony. Faint whispers slithered through the silence, coiling tightly around my mind, weaving themselves into my thoughts. You've released us, but you are not yet free, they murmured, merging as one voice that resonated deep within my very being. A sickness twisted in my stomach as recognition dawned. These were the voices of the library's souls, their anguish now mingled with an exhilarating curiosity. Set us free, they urged, their spectral forms swirling in the glowing shadows, desperate for action, their faces casting haunting glances at me. You must understand, theory coming. What you have awakened cannot be quelled by a mere thought. Before I could comprehend their warning, I noticed that the walls of the cavern began to shift, the obsidian surface heaving like the final breaths of a dying creature. Symbols carved eons ago sprang to life, pulsating with venomous intent as if the very foundation of dread was harnessed in their intricate patterns, and I felt a familiar presence lurking beyond, one that was no longer an ethereal projection but a tangible force drawing closer, dragged by the power I had unwittingly released. Silence the journal. One of the souls cried out, its wailing voice becoming urgent, laced with a terror unlike anything I had yet encountered. It is a beacon of their power. As if animated by their collective plea, I fumbled with the journal still clasped tightly in my hand. The inscriptions glimmered, vivid with nightmares of the past, and as the realization sank into my bones, understanding forced a chill down my spine. These didn't merely hold knowledge, they housed horrors that sought to breach the boundary between worlds. Just then, the ground beneath me trembled once more, and a fissure opened wide, revealing molten darkness that seeped slowly upwards, a viscous substance wanting to breathe, to spread, to consume. From its depths, a figure began to emerge, churning like smoke, materializing into form, an echo of the horrors I had uncovered. Pale and twisted, its eyes burned with the blackest night. "What have you awakened?" it hissed, a voice slithering through the air, thick with hate. "You have given us life again in this world of the living." The entity loomed large, its onyx skin rippling as if echoing the fears of those who dared gaze upon it. I stood frozen, caught in its hungry gaze, its lips curling into a grotesque imitation of a smile that revealed rows of jagged teeth, sharp as daggers ready to tear. My impulse screamed for me to flee, but my limbs transformed to lead, heavy with the weight of voices begging for freedom and forgiveness. With a sudden movement, it lunged towards me, a blur of darkness that threatened to snuff out all light. In reckless desperation, I hurled the journal into the chasm, watching with horror as it arced through the air, knowing that it would either be my salvation or my undoing. "Foolish child!" the entity snarled, halting in its tracks, suspended in indecision as the journal disappeared into the abyss. "You cannot escape your fate. You are damnation incarnate, the harbinger of their doom and yours." The ground trembled violently, sounds of crackling energy igniting the cavern around us, and I grasped desperately at the anvil of reality, tethered by threads of illusion and choice. The whispers intensified, rising to a terrifying pitch as the shadows around me lengthened, shifting dangerously like a living entity that threatened to swallow me whole. Out of nowhere, a blinding light exploded, emanating from the depths of the chasm I had released it into, illuminating the entire expanse in an otherworldly hue. The raw power surged like a tidal wave, pushing against the dark entity, forcing it back, but at that moment, I felt something else, the calls of souls twisting violently in their prison, their cries reaching a fever pitch of despair that clawed at my psyche. "Trust the journal." The voices entwined, a message both urgent and desperate, ricocheting within the vast chambers of my mind. Only by embracing what lies ahead can the cycle be broken, and with that singular moment of understanding, the dark entity screamed, thrashing violently, the shadows retreating as I took the final leap forward into the heart of the light emerging from the chasm. "I will not succumb," I shouted, my voice merging with the clamoring souls, suspending fear in its purest form. I felt the light envelop me completely, but as I succumbed to its embrace, one final horrifying truth clawed its way out. Whether I emerged on the other side as the key to their freedom or the architect of my own damnation, that I could not yet foresee. Before I could grasp further clarity, I saw faces, lost souls etched in their final screams, hovering just beyond reach within the brilliance. Each of their eyes locked onto mine, wide with dread, as a chilling realization hit me like a hammer. The entities have latched onto us. They are not merely unfolding, they are coming for you, for us all. And just as my heart wrenched in realization, I heard the whispers converge in an anguished harmony. "We will not be tamed or silenced. You are the key, choose or be chosen." With a final roar, the world around me succumbed to darkness, a veil I could not see beyond, pulling me deeper into a sinister void. And just before the darkness completely enveloped me, one last cry echoed through the abyss: "You must decide before time runs out." Then there was only silence. A chilling stillness enveloped me, a deceptive calm following the cataclysmic roar that had just ripped through the nothingness. It felt as though I was caught in a void outside of time, adrift yet anchored to a swirling depth of shadows and whispers. I stood suspended, my senses reeling, the very fabric of my being vibrating with the tension of choices unmade and futures unwritten. Gradually, flickers of light emerged, casting a ghastly glow across my surroundings, illuminating ancient walls lined with countless markings. Each etching seemed alive, twisting and contorting, depicting horrors that beckoned from ages long past. Visions of unimaginable torment danced before my eyes, and I staggered back, grappling with the impact of the utter despair etched into the very stones around me. It whispered secrets of those who had walked this path before, who had sought knowledge yet found only destruction. The voices of the damned returned, more frantic now, urging me to flee while I still could. Wash away the ink of history. They cried, their urgency boiling over into sheer terror. Heed not their siren call, history has no mercy. Suddenly, the ground underneath me began to ripple, like water disturbed by some unseen tremor. I felt a tug reaching deep within me, pulling on the threads of my psyche with a promise of freedom intertwined with an inescapable dread. Shadows slithered along the walls, coiling with sinister intelligence, beckoning me to delve deeper into the horrors I had unleashed. "No," I murmured, taking a faltering step back, but the darkness surged, pummeling me with memories of my own sins, dredging up guilt I wished to suppress. Tattered remnants of my past unfolded in vivid detail, faces twisted in agony, echoes of laughter replaced by shrieks of anguish. I squeezed my eyes shut, desperate to block it all out, but the torrent of memories was unrelenting, drawing me in, fracturing the barrier of my consciousness. Then came the low growl, rippling through the air, sending icy tendrils crawling down my spine. "So you've awakened the echoes," a voice hissed, slithering around my mind like a serpent. "In your quest for truth, you have become a vessel, a dark horizon between the realms. Embrace your fate." Just then, a horrific form emerged from the swarming shadows, a grotesque amalgamation of the lost souls I had encountered earlier, their faces melded together in a single mask of raw fear and despair. Their mouths opened in a soundless wail, eyes wide and pleading, faces horribly contorted, a haunting reminder of what awaited me if I did not heed their warnings. "No!" I shrieked, the sound tearing from my throat, raw with panic. With desperate instinct, I flung my arms forward, searching the air for anything solid to cling to. The endless abyss mocked me, the shadows writhing in glee as I floundered. But as I squirmed against the grip of despair, something within me stirred, igniting a flicker of defiance. "Release me!" I cried, mustering what strength remained. The words echoed, rippling through the cavern like a shockwave, awakening the dormant energies that hung thick in the air. In response, a surge of light ignited the dark figure before me, illuminating not just the entity but the horror-laden faces of the lost souls trapped in its thrall. For a moment, the chamber felt like an eruption of hope, a promise that the darkness could be, if not defeated, then at least momentarily subdued. But the light faltered, shivering like a candle caught in a ferocious wind. The growl became a snarl, slicing through the air like daggers, punctuated by the frantic whispers of the souls. "Choice is a cruel master," they cried, their voices merging into a cacophony of dread. "The veil between worlds thins your allegiance." Then, just as the shadows began to retract, something shifted beyond my perception, an ominous rumble that rolled across the cavern like distant thunder. A fissure tore through the floor, oozing a thick, putrid mist that coiled upward, swirling around my ankles, suffocating the lingering light. They come for you." The entity howled, distorting into a cacophony of misery laced with barely contained fury. The mist enveloped me, its touch like ice creeping into my bones, dragging me down into the darkness with an insatiable hunger. Struggling to rise, I felt the tendrils of fate wrapping tighter around me, space and time warping into a nightmare of indecision. I realized that my past sins were creeping closer, tangible in their malevolence, dragging their haunted shadows like wings of despair. As panic clawed at the edges of my sanity, I understood with devastating clarity, I could not escape what I had awakened. The journal, the entity, the yearning for forbidden knowledge, it all converged into a singular choice that threatened to consume not just me, but the very essence of reality itself. Just as I was about to lose myself entirely to the mist, a piercing scream ripped through the air, one of primal terror that resonated from deep within the void. I whipped around and saw something grotesquely emerging behind me, a mass of writhing shapes manifesting from the mist. Dark figures dragged themselves from the abyss, grotesque and hungry, eyes flickering with hunger. A chilling voice rose from the chaos, sliding through the air like oil on water. You may have a moment longer to decide, but remember the clock is ticking. With those words echoing behind me, I faced the malevolent figures creeping closer, the whispers of the damned swelling into a deafening torrent. Each heartbeat seemed to synchronize with their advance, a sickening reminder of a choice that hung over me like an executioner's blade. In that instant, as the mist thickened around me and the figures reached for my very soul, I understood the gravity of the truth, the realization that within this moment of pure terror, freedom lay not in escape, but in the power of my choice. And as the darkness closed in, I was left with one horrific and undeniable truth: every choice in this cursed descent would lead to either annihilation or the rebirth of horrors beyond imagination. In the depths of despair, I could feel the weight of the world bearing down on me, and I had mere seconds to decide before time ran out entirely. The shadows twisted, their edges blurring into vague, lurching forms as the figures pressed closer, their intentions cold and monstrous. I could see now that they were not merely figments of my imagination, they were embodiments of anguish, silhouettes of long-lost souls that had wandered too far into this nightmare. Eyes glazed and hollow, they reached towards me with fingers like knives, desperate to reclaim what they had lost, and they seemed to absorb the very light clinging to the chamber. I stumbled backwards, my pulse racing like a wild horse, ricocheting off the walls of my mind, colliding against the oppressive aura of their presence. The mist continued to seep further into my thoughts, clouding clarity and infusing my veins with cold terror. No, I choked out, struggling to stand against the tide of souls, I refuse to be like you. But my defiance felt fragile, disintegrating like ash in the wind. The air crackled with them all around, taunting and mocking, feeding off my fear, whispering their tales of despair and desperation, all too eager to drag me into their eternal longing for reclamation. Join us, they urged, the syllables curling around me like barbed wire, tearing at my will. Your fate is entwined with ours. Then, from beyond the writhing mass, a sudden break, a moment where the oppressive silence hung heavy and taut. And then, a distant cacophony erupted, a sound that clashed with the very essence of my resolve. It was a drumming, rhythmic and haunting, echoing like a dark heartbeat in the depths of the chamber, growing louder with each pulse. The figures halted, their grotesque faces frozen in confusion as if wrestling with the noise that clawed through their fog of despair. What is that? I breathed, desperation mingling with a sliver of hope blooming within me. With every beat, the resonance surged forward, urging me to follow as if inviting me to uncover something buried beneath layers of history. The phantoms quivered, their forms entangling into one another, wailing in protest. I pivoted, my heart pounding fiercely in my chest, letting instinct guide my feet, plunging into the darkened passageway that opened behind the coming echoes. As I sprinted forward, the mist foamed around my ankles, grasping, threatening to pull me back into its depths. I leaned into the sound, steadying my breath, letting it steer me through the labyrinth of twisting shadows and forgotten nightmares. Each footfall resonated like thunder in the hollow chamber, harmonizing with the distant drums beating, pounding towards an unknown truth. But as I ran deeper, I began to realize the drawbacks of such desperate abandon. The shadows were no longer mere bystanders but twisted companions, stretching out hungrily in pursuit, whispering incoherent threats of torment. I could feel their presence seeping into my bones, igniting every error I had ever made, a cacophony of guilt and pain crowding my consciousness and clouding my clarity. In a sudden, gut-wrenching moment, I reached a threshold, stumbling into a vast emptiness where the echoes resonated with unearthly clarity. The sight before me was both magnificent and dreadful, ancient murals painted on the walls, capturing the souls I had just fled, eternally entwined in agony. Their faces twisted in expressions of loss or despair, forever trapped in the moments of their failure, their choices. I was not the first to stand before these horrors. My gaze skittered across the wall, searching for meaning within the tapestry of nightmares, until I spotted a phrase, jagged and raw. To seek freedom is to embrace the labyrinth. The word seemed alive, shimmering as though burning with a meaning deeper than mere language. As I read the phrase over and over, attempting to unravel its significance, I heard the drums grow louder, now merging with a voice thrumming deep and low, wrapping around my mind like a cloak of shadows. "You feel it, don't you?" It purred, a serpent in my ear. "The truth lies ahead, obscured but tangible. Embrace it, heal what was lost." A flicker of light sparked in the void around me, illuminating a path that twisted further into the darkness, a beacon cutting through the anguished cries of the figures who had once reached for salvation and found only the end. "No!" I shouted defiantly. "I am no vessel for your despair." But the figures surged back to life, their faces now contorted in rage, their howls mixing with the rhythm of the drums, filling the chamber with a cacophony of grief. They churned forward, a tide of anguish determined to reclaim every choice I had ever made, every decision that led me here, and then I heard the drumming shifted, morphed into a syncopated rhythm that felt alive, pulsing with a sense of urgency. It was a call, an insistent beckoning that rumbled deep within my chest. "Choose." It bellowed, the voice igniting greater terror within me, shoving me against the labyrinthal choice that lay ahead. Trembling, the weight of history pressed tightly around me. I was engulfed in an unsettling recognition. I could either unravel the past unto itself and find the key to freedom, a freedom tinged with dark understanding, or succumb to the wrath of those who had all but drowned in their choices. A crumbling roar reverberated around me, drowning out my breath, and as the figures lunged closer, the light flickered, threatening to extinguish. What choice lay before me? The rhythm thrummed like a war drum, but my heart raced for a different reason. It was a race against time itself, and I was unprepared for the horrifying truth yet to come, and just as I steeled myself for the plunge into the abyss ahead, I felt the ground beneath me begin to shake, fissures cracking open around us. From the depths of it, the blurring forms of the lost surged forth with renewed vigor, howling for my allegiance. The ancient murals began to crack, exposing a turbulent void, a terrifying truth that awaited me on the other side. "Choose wisely," the voice purred one last time, creeping through my soul like ice. And as I hesitated, the shadows screamed, the mist enveloped me once more, and the ground trembled beneath the choices of unforgotten souls. Would I unravel or be consumed? The moment hung in the balance as the abyss yawned wide, and a solitary truth echoed in my consciousness, drowning the sound of the drums. Time itself was unraveling. The trembling ground beneath me roared to life, and I was suddenly caught in a whirlwind of sound and shadow. The figures surrounding me twisted and lunged like a living tapestry of pain, their hollow eyes fixated on my own, yearning, pleading, and accusing. I could feel their fury realigning, stretching taut like a bowstring pulled to its limit, waiting for my choice, my surrender. With each heavy beat of the unseen drums resounding in my chest, I stepped closer to the gaping void, the fissures widening to show a chaotic abyss of shimmering darkness. Beyond the fracture, I glimpsed fleeting images, fragments of lives forgotten, tragedies played out in pod-like cocoons that twisted endlessly against the void, a dance of despair wrapped in nothingness. The sound echoed with a diabolic harmony, crashing waves of horror that threatened to drown me. A part of me screamed to retreat, to flee back into the shadows and the clarity of distance, but an insidious tug of curiosity compelled me forward, an irrepressible need to decipher the fate that had coiled around me like an unseen serpent. Do you understand now? The voice slithered into my mind, seductive and chilling. They are not angry with you. They long for connection. They seek reconciliation with the lives they lost, each sorrow an invitation, each visage a plea. Before I could respond, the shadows surged violently, uncoiling with anguished wails that thrashed about me like storm-tossed waves. My feet found purchase on the brink, and in an act of defiance against the pull of the lost souls, I shouted, "Show me then. Let me understand your suffering." The ground rippled as if my words had unsettled the very fabric of reality. And suddenly, the rhythm of the drums shifted, intertwining with a low, mournful chorus that surrounded me, yet felt eerily familiar, whispering fragments of my own memories back to me. Faces blurred into one another, friends I had lost in time, moments filled with regret, pieces of my own story woven into the tapestry of these souls. Then, visions exploded before me, nightmarish glimpses of choices made and forsaken, and I realized they were not just anonymous figures, they were reflections of myself, echoes of decisions left in the shadows of my mind. A child reaching for a parent walked among the wails, a woman drowned in grief folded into despair, a lost friend fading into obscurity, each one a memory drawn forth from the depths of my own heart. I faltered, shaken by the mingling of their agonies with my own. Understanding began to curdle into horror, a visceral ache as I recognized the far-reaching tendrils of despair that connected us all in ways I had never fully accepted. "What do you want from me?" I wailed, feeling both prisoner and witness, ensnared in their collective anguish. The forms closed in, swirling around me with a greater intensity, their cries crescendoing into a nightmarish symphony that threatened to rip apart my sanity. "We want you to face it." They screamed in unison, their tones a blend of anguish and urgency that echoed against the walls of my mind. "You cannot escape what you have sewn into the fabric of your life." Suddenly, a figure broke the tumult. It stepped into the flickering light from the murals, its silhouette distinct from the other stall, regal, its face resembling a rotting mask of familiar pain. Recognition twisted in my gut. This was someone I knew, someone I had lost, a tangible ghost flickering between life and death, reaching out. "Help me," it rasped, voice thick with sorrow. "You can do it, but you must choose first." My veins ran cold. The shadows simmered around me, their growls morphing into an impatient thrumming, echoing darkly against my resolve. "Choose," the dark voice commanded again, layers of longing and fear thundering in its undertone, "before you are lost eternally." In that moment, an unsettling truth began to unfurl. My choice wasn't merely about embracing the past, it was also about confronting it, accepting the burdens I had tried to bury. Would I stand with the shadows, entangled in the labyrinth I had tread too long? Or would I cast the chains away and brave the darkness ahead, an insurmountable choice that could shred the veil between worlds? But something shifted, a tremor of barely controlled chaos in the air. The shadows growled, their elongated arms grasping towards me, fracturing reality before my very eyes. I took a step back, fear escalating, feeling the heaviness of their grief threatening to engulf me, and then, as if a switch had been flicked, the air pulsed with an intense charge, the ground threatening to crack open wider. The face of the ghost I had known distorted suddenly, morphing into something unrecognizably horrific. It twisted into a grotesque mask of loss, its mouth stretching wide, a vast pit of despair emanating an ungodly scream that ripped through every essence of my being. Instinct kicked in before rational thought could catch up, and without a conscious decision, I turned from the abyss, ready to flee into the depth of the darkened passages again. But before I could fully take the plunge backward, the world around me twisted, convulsing violently before vanishing into a hazy void. And then there was blackness, deep and all-consuming, wrapping around me like a shroud. As silence suddenly descended into the chaos, I felt my breath catch, my lungs burning in raw panic. Had I chosen wrong? But in that existential void, a single thought echoed fiercely: what awaited me if I fell back into the depths? Just then, whispers began to weave through the darkness, taunting and beckoning once more. "You've not escaped," they murmured softly, as a new rhythm began to pulse in time with my heart. "You're still bound to us. There is no freedom without sacrifice, and the truth is yet to reveal itself." The shadows closed in again, and panic surged anew as I realized my journey was far from over, the labyrinth continuing to weave its ceaseless horror. And at that moment, the ground buckled beneath me once more, a crack opening wide, revealing a void spiraling into unfathomable depths. The faces surged forward with outstretched hands, pulling me down into the darkness. "Choose wisely," whispered the shadowed legion, their voices slithering into my heart as the environment trembled violently around me, and then the ground gave way entirely, plunging me deeper into the encroaching void, darkness hungrily swallowing the last remnants of light. In that moment of freefall, a horrifying thought crystallized: I had yet to choose, and the choice would cost me dearly as the abyss awaited. Would I embrace the horrors of those who came before, or would I forge a path of my own, risking everything to escape their fates? As the air rushed past me, the rhythmic drums of the unknown pulsed louder than ever, demanding I confront my darkest truths before swallowing me whole, and then everything went dark. I awoke on the cold, stone floor of an unfamiliar chamber, disoriented and trembling. The last echoes of anguish faded in my ears, swallowing me like echoes of a nightmare receding into silence. Distant groans stirred within the far corners of my mind, shadows flickering where light could not reach. My heart hammered against my ribs, pounding like a war drum, the rhythm syncing with the whispers that crawled over me. The flickering of a single flame erupted nearby, an old lantern suspended in midair. Its glow sliced through the darkness, illuminating carvings etched in the stone walls around me. Countless faces peered back, twisted in eternal torment, lost souls trapped in this hell. What have I become? I gasped aloud, gripping my head as if I could crush the turmoil swirling within. Welcome to the Archive of Souls, a voice rasped from the shadows, smooth yet filled with malice, echoing through the chamber. I instinctively stumbled back, slamming against the cold wall. Before me, shadows began to shift, coalescing into a figure tall, gaunt, and dressed in tattered remnants of a past life, its arm outstretched as though inviting me to join it in my suffering. I recognized that face. It was distorted but familiar, a ghost of my own youthful dreams lost in the archives. You awakened something essential, didn't you? It crooned, a smirk curving what remained of its lips. I didn't mean to. I managed to utter, choked with dread as fear twisted the pit of my stomach. I wanted to know. You were always curious, weren't you? The figure mused, stepping closer, shadows dancing around its form. Knowledge seeks to consume, and you wished for understanding. But you took what was not yours and disturbed the balance. The malevolence in its voice was palpable, and I shifted uneasily, clutching my trembling hands against my heart, each beat resonating with guilt. I can still make this right. If you're here, then there's a way out, a way to fix this, to free you. A chorus of whispers erupted from the very stone surrounding us, an agonized symphony rising and falling, suffocating me with an overwhelming sense of despair. Oh, but you misunderstand, dear child, the figure countered, its eyes narrowing with cruel amusement. You can't release what has been shackled by your very existence. Something shifted in the chamber, the walls responding to my muted horror. Visions surged, my choices spiraled into view, shame, guilt, a disquieting truth hiding just beneath my consciousness. I had feasted upon their stories without understanding the price, the toll that echoed through the eons. The lantern flared, casting an even brighter light across the room. I shielded my eyes just in time to witness the shadows twist violently, the forms of countless souls springing forth, each one fated to channel their stories through me. Do you see? They cried in unison, anguish amplifying the luminosity within the chamber. We are bound together, you hold the key to our release. Panic surged within, igniting a fire that burned through me as the realization infiltrated my heart. No. I'm nothing like you, I can't share in your burden. Ah, but the truth is simple, the figure murmured, its voice dripping with unholy glee. You already have tasted despair, the echoes of your past weave closely with ours. There's no escaping the cycle of suffering. With a snap of its fingers, the shadows erupted into a frenzy, dragging me closer to the Centera, dark abyss pulsating with a primal hunger that sought to reclaim what was once lost. The air crackled energetically as the shadows converged around me, the weight of countless sins crushing my spirit. You have a choice, little librarian, the spectral figure hissed, its grin widening as if drunk on my fear. Join us in our eternal suffering, or become something much worse, one of the cursed, the damned. I gasped, images of shadowy tendrils creeping toward me, gripping my ankles and pulling me down under the weight of their collective despair. It was then I realized the unthinkable truth, every moment I had spent buried in those archives, every word I had devoured had bound us together in an inescapable fate. I was no longer just an onlooker, I was part of their story, an unwilling echo in their torment. The dark figure reached out, its bony fingers brushing against my arm, and I felt an electric jolt of fear. What will it be? It murmured, anticipation rippling through the atmosphere. Will you take your place among us, or will you run? Just as desperation wrapped around my throat, tearing my resolve, I caught a glimpse of the journal nestled within the grasp of a wraith-like form, a sinister reflection of the knowledge I had unleashed, bound to me by pure malice. Without thinking, I leapt forward, the space shimmering, and grasped the object, feeling its energy surge against my palm. Seal the fate, I whispered, remembering not only the call of the lost but my own yearning to escape their reality. The journal activated, light bursting forth like a long-forgotten scream, like an answer that must echo through time. I release you. And as the words passed my lips, the air transformed into an unbearable burst of energy that vibrated through every shadow, ripping apart the chamber exists. The faces of the damned flickered around me, their anguished expressions momentarily softening as if recognizing my intent, but the malevolent figure before me roared, its shadowy form tearing against the reverberating light as darkness collided with newfound brilliance, creating a violent storm of agony and release. You cannot cage us. It shrieked, agony bleeding into fury. You will pay the ultimate price. As I hurled the journal into the open fissure, me final act, a wildfire cascaded throughout the cavern, consuming and illuminating their shapes. Everything spiraled into chaos as the darkness screeched and writhed against the radiating truth, and then, in an unholy explosion, everything imploded. The chamber erupted in cascades of cries, life thundering through my veins, liberated and unleashed. I was propelled through the void, casting aside my fears, becoming intertwined with every soul I had unwittingly claimed, but just as light flooded my vision, a single whispered truth lingered in the air, imbued with a horrifying realization that clawed at me. You thought you could release us? The figure called out, the flames twisting into its form. You are merely the beginning of the reawakening. You are now bound to both life and shadow. I tumbled backward, and with a thunderous crack, reality fractured around me, tossing me into dark warmth where nothing existed but echoes of despair and laughter. As silence swallowed me whole, a chilling whisper crept back into my ear, promising that even in liberation, I would never escape my own eternal nightmare. Welcome to the darkness that dwells unfulfilled. You are one of us now.